Good evening, Ms. Perrell.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Farnow.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Farnow.
Good evening.
Welcome to the Antelope Valley Union High School District Board meeting. Good evening. Please be advised that the Board of Trustees are participating in the meeting with teleconferencing. The meeting is being recorded and all actions will be taken by a roll call vote. I would like to ask board members to respond to the following questions as I call your name. Are you able to hear our proceedings on your end? Mr. Johnson?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Perrell?
Yes.
Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Rush? Okay, he's absent. And Ms. McGrady, yes. We do not have any comments from the public for any closed session agendized items. So the board will adjourn to closed session to consider and may act on any of the closed session matters listed in agenda item 16. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion.
Okay, Dr. Ruffin, I think you made the motion and Mrs. Perrell will put you for the second if that's okay. Any discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
For the record, board clerk, I will not be attending closed session as our board attorney, John Harris, is not allowed, even though the board majority has stated that he has a right to. I'm just stating for the record on page 3 of the manual from January 19, 2019. It was a board workshop titled Legal Framework for Effective and Collaborative Governance in the Antelope Valley Union High School District. It's under E for operating as a collective body. It reads that the board operates by consensus. It also says that the board takes collective responsibility for their performance. It also says that the board acts by majority roll only, and that's board bylaw 9323, Education Code 35164. In addition, board bylaw 9005 says that we understand that the authority rests within the board as a whole and not as individuals. So that was a board decision and not an individual decision of one member. Thank you.
Thank you. For anyone listening for the first time, a board majority is required to authorize a board member to consult with or direct work to the attorney, Mr. Harris. We've not had a board majority since early November. So therefore, he is not allowed to come into closed session because no one's authorized to direct work to him or give him work for the district. So I guess we're moving forward.
Board clerk, just for clarification to what you said, this is also just for anyone that's listening. This is a 5-member board. So just for clarification, and this was clarified with CSBA, other attorneys, and I did call and have conversations with other board presidents and other board members on other boards. In the event that on any board, this is a 5-member board, when there's a board majority that makes a vote, it doesn't matter if a board member steps off or a board member dies. If that board majority set a vote, that is the vote until a new board majority says otherwise. And our board clerk is very correct. There has not been a new board majority to overturn what the previous board majority has stated. So at this time, what has been set in place with the previous board majority is the law of this board until a new board majority states. So it is stated that myself and Trustee Perrell are not given our due diligence to operate in our board right to govern, because we are being told that just because previous board member Davis stepped off, that our vote is no longer valid when it is. Thank you.
Yes, your vote is valid. The issue comes with the authorization. The previous board majority gave authorization to Robert Bob Davis to be the person who would speak with Mr. Harris. When he left, we then no longer had anyone authorized. And since that time, we have not had a board majority to give authorization to anyone. So our board bylaw 9200 is that no individual board member can commit the district to an expenditure. So none of us are allowed to reach out to Mr. Harris and have him do work for the district to pay because we don't have that authorization. So that's where we're stalemated, is no one has the authorization to give him work or to use his services.
Thank you, Mrs. Thank you,
Sure.
Board Clerk, for that. And I think that I'm very happy that we're able to have this dialogue, because the board bylaw that you just cited is correct, that no individual board member can make any decisions for this board. And that's why it is the board that acts as a collective. And so the decision of the board, which is the power of three, is the direction of the board. And the direction of this board was to hire Mr. Harris as the board attorney. So you are correct in saying that no board can give any one board member any higher authority over anyone. So you're correct that Mr. Davis doesn't have any, he didn't have any higher authority over yourself, myself, Mr. Harris, or any of us. So that is correct. And the vote of the board majority to have Mr. Harris as our board authority is correct. So thank you so much for that clarity. Thank you.
Once again, the issue is with the authorization. No one on our board is authorized to speak to him other than our superintendent, and he does not require his services for closed session. Since no one is authorized to have him come do work, we can't have him here to do work. So it would be, he
Ms.
can't.
McGrady, this is Jay Furno. Would you like me to
Yes.
clarify?
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you were saying was absolutely right. While Harris and Associates has a contract to act as legal counsel for the district, the board bylaw only gives the superintendent or the board majority the authority to contact the attorney, and the board majority can assign an individual board member to speak with the attorney. In November, or previous to Bob Davis's resignation, the board majority had designated Bob Davis as that person. And as you earlier stated, when he resigned, there is no current individual board member who has the authority to contact Mr. Harris.
Board Clerk, once again, there is nothing that's stated of the such, and this board also, board majority, authorized Fagan, Friedman, and Full Frost to no longer be the representation. So I don't even know why Mr. Furno is even on this line or talking, because even though Fagan, Friedman, and Full Frost has a contract with this board majority also voted to have AALRR be the representative board of this, be the representative firm of this board, and also allocated $250,000 in their account. So that was what the board did. And that doesn't have anything to do with the superintendent. That was the direction of this board. But that was also usurped by the superintendent. So I'm gonna rest on that. And I rest my case because we're only supposed to go back.
Ms. McGrady, if I could clarify, because
so Mr. Furno shouldn't even be on this call.
Dr. Ruffin has repeatedly misstated and made inaccurate statements about what action the board took with regards to Fagan, Friedman, and Full Frost. She is absolutely incorrect and wrong that the board majority ever took action that that Fagan, Friedman, and Full Frost was no longer authorized to do work with the school district. That is just absolutely 100% wrong.
Thank you. So let's move back to our agenda. We had a motion and a second. We are voting on whether to go to closed session. Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. That's an aye. Ms. Perrell?
No.
No. Dr. Ruffin?
That's no, and the sound is not on for the community, by the way.
Okay. Thank you. We'll check on that. You're a no, Mr. Rush is absent, and I'm a yes. So we will be having closed session, but it will not be a formal one. For those of you listening in, we will be back at 7 o'clock, and we'll try to get the sound fixed. Thank you.
with social distancing measures.
Good evening, Ms. Gookins.
Good evening.
Can you hear me, Gary?
Good evening, Dr. Kelly.
Say it one more time.
Good evening.
Okay, cool. I got you.
Welcome back, Dr. Ruffin.
Hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Okay, you can hear me.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Fraser. Mr. Fraser, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Coming across very clear. Thank you.
All right.
Welcome back, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Welcome back, Ms. Perrell.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
Is this Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you, Dr. Ruffin.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Shy. Can you hear me? Nope, she's not there.
Good evening. Please bear with us. We're having a few technical difficulties. We're trying to get all the board members who can on for the meeting. So bear with us for just a few minutes, please.
Yeah. Good evening. Ms. Perrell, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm changing my name right now.
Okay, now we know who you are.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's my son. He was using my laptop. So yeah.
No worries, been there before myself. We didn't know who that was, so that's why.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
There.
Yep, it looks good. And you're coming across 5x.
Okay, thank you. I can hear clearly on your end as well.
Good evening. Welcome back to the Antelope Valley Union High School District Board meeting. We will have the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand and place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next on the agenda is the PINCO meeting. The Board of Trustees would like to adjourn to the PINCO meeting. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ruffin. And any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, that was an aye. Thank you, Ms. Perrell. How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Rush is absent and Ms. McGrady, yes.
Mrs. McGrady,
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to know if we can do a moment of silence because in light of tomorrow being 9/11.
Certainly. Thank you. Moving forward, we do not have any public comments on the PINCO this evening, so we will go to C, the unaudited actuals. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the 2019-2020 unaudited actuals for the transmittal to the LA County Office of Education. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. A second? I will second it. Any discussion? Hearing none. Student board member, how do you vote? Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Ms. Perrell?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Rush is absent and Ms. McGrady is yes. That's 3 in favor, 1 absent, and Mr. Johnson voted yes. Moving forward to D, the purchase order schedule. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve and authorize the purchases outlined on the attached schedule. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. A second?
Second.
Thank you. And any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Perrell?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes, and Mr. Rush is absent. Ms. McGrady, yes. So that's 3 yeses, 1 absent, and Mr. Johnson voted yes. We will reconvene to the regular meeting. We are at 6A, Educational Services Constitution Week for the Daughters of the American Revolution. Mr. Nehan.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board and the listening public. Things are a little bit different now with the COVID, but the Daughters of the American Revolution have been coming before this board since 2014, and they want to bring in awareness and encourage patriotism during Constitution Week, which is September 17th through 23rd. So in light of the current circumstances and their inability to attend physically, they provided the documents that are attached for your review.
Thank you, Mr. Nehan. We move forward to 6B for a presentation, the role of leadership in advancing equity with the Antelope Valley Union High School District through PAN Limited. Mr. Nehan, that's you again.
Thank you. Just wanted to bring a quick update to the board on our work with Dr. Noguera and PAN Limited. Next slide, please. We've been working on two realms of focus. The first one is a Leadership Equity Institute, and this has been all of the administrators in the district. There was a total of 6 sessions. We had an opening session with Dr. Noguera. The remaining topics include reframing equity in the current environment. So it's understanding where we are with the current Black Lives Matter movement, all of the issues surrounding equity that have been on the forefront of the national stage since May. And then also understanding how equity is impacting some of our students with regards to the COVID-19 distance learning. The next one is creating a traumative sensitive learning environment, leadership for equity, and then closing with conditions for teaching and learning. Next slide, please. The other realm that we're working in is at each of our sites with the administrative and leadership teams, and that is working in 4 visits, kind of a pre-visit assessment, self-assessment, some self-reflections, and a face-to-face meeting that already happened with the leaders of all of these campuses, and 2 support providers from PAN. Right now, the sites will begin working just as of post-Labor Day, begin working on their root cause analysis. And all of this work will now be done virtually. And then they'll go from theory to action and draft an action plan. Next slide, please. So kind of moving forward, again, we're adding a session and just heard from Dr. Noguera's folks today. It looks like we'll have him back to work with our admin as a whole group on October 29th instead of September 24th. We'll reframe the work and put it within the current national context. We'll complete the remaining sessions between October and January, and then we'll take some time, sit down, and reevaluate what progress we made, what next steps we need to take in our continued work with PAN Limited. And again, it's important to remind everyone that all this work takes place in a virtual setting. Next slide. And then again, with our site action planning, we have 2 remaining planning sessions at each site with 2 of the support providers from Dr. Noguera's group. The sites will then complete their equity action plan and have it ready for implementation, whether we're at a distance learning or at a blended model when we return to school in the spring. And then we'll take some time and evaluate and plan those next steps with Dr. Noguera and his folks again. And with that, next slide, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nehan. We appreciate it very much. Moving forward, we are at C, the presentation of special education programs and services and distance learning update. Dr. Lisa Shute is with us this evening. Welcome.
Good evening to the board and to the cabinet. Good evening to the community as well. I'm Dr. Lisa Shute. I'm your director of special education for our district. And tonight I'll be giving you a brief overview of the programs and the services currently being provided district-wide. as well as giving you an update on services that are continuing to be provided during distance learning. Next slide. First, our students. We currently have 3,865 students enrolled in our district with current IEPs that are receiving services. And we have a very diverse student population within our program, and all disability categories under the federal law IDEA are represented within our district and being serviced in our programs. Next slide. And so I'm going to be giving you an overview of the different programs that you see listed here, as well as some of the specialized programs that we facilitate in our district, including our specialized program at Desert Pathways High School, our Pathways to Success Transition Program, and also our educationally related intensive counseling service program, also known as ERICS. Next slide. First, our staff. We have an amazing staff, and this is really the success of our program. Our first and foremost, our special education teachers, our educational specialists. We currently have approximately 200 teachers within our program. Also, our amazing support staff, our instructional aides and paraeducators. Right now, we have approximately 340 support staff members providing direct service to our students, and we really appreciate all the service that they provide. And of course, our site teams that are made up of our special education secretaries, our teachers on special assignment that oversee their programs on their campuses, and of course, our special education vice principals and our special education experts, our program specialists that provide direct support to our program district-wide. And also a list here of our related service providers, which I will talk to you about on the next slide. But most importantly, our special education students receive support district-wide. So there's staff support for our students with disabilities being provided on all of our campuses. Next slide. Our related support services. Here you can see the list of related support services that we provide, and these services are provided according to a student's IEP. These services continue to be provided directly to students during distance learning. There's no change in their IEP goals, frequency, or duration during distance learning. It continues to be provided according to that student's IEP. Next slide. Our first program, our Strategies for Success program, for short, we call it SFS, also known as our RSP, or our resource program. These are our students who typically have one period of special education services during their school day. So they receive general education support from their special education, inclusion support from their special education teachers within the general education setting. So they're receiving support on organizational skills, study skills, test taking skills, and they're ensured that they're receiving their accommodations within those general education classes. And so during distance learning, we made sure that there was an emphasis placed on developing their technology skills, being able to access various online websites to help support learning, and of course, continuing to support their self-monitoring skills as well. Next slide. Now, these are three separate programs: our autism program, our pre-vocational program, and our SDD program for our students with severe disabilities. While these three programs are three separate programs that we provide in our district, they all have a similar focus and service. So these students are working on developing functional academic and life skills. They are engaging in community-based instruction activities. Now, right now, these students aren't going out into the community just because of health concerns. We want to make sure that we keep them safe, but they are enjoying, virtual community-based instruction lessons, such as visiting Miss Hyman's ranch this past week, learning about taking care of animals, and also doing cooking lessons for Miss Hallmeyer's kitchen. So we really appreciate our teachers being creative during distance learning and ensuring that students stay engaged. These students are, the student progress is being monitored by staff through a program that we utilize district-wide called Review 360, and it helps the staff keep on track with ensuring that students are making progress towards their goals. During distance learning, there was a focus on increased use of technology and making sure that the students are receiving training in how to utilize and access this online technology. Next slide. Our special day class academic program. Now, this program is for our students with IEPs who need specialized instruction in various core subject areas. So these students, their teachers are collaborating with the gen ed teachers to ensure that curriculum is being appropriately provided, but in a modified way. So these classes have support by an instructional aid, so students can receive that direct support when needed. And students are also being able to utilize various online and web-based programs to support their learning, such as Read and Math 180, and web-based tutoring programs such as Gizmos, which is very interactive and especially designed for students with learning disabilities. And during distance learning, again, the focus was on ensuring that our students are trained on being able to utilize these programs to continue, teachers are continuing to provide that rigorous instruction through the virtual model, and of course, maintaining consistent contact with parents and students. Next slide. And in our behavior management program, the students that participate in this program are receiving both specialized academic instruction, but also there's a focus on social emotional learning development, learning self-monitoring skills, self-regulation. And so these classrooms tend to be smaller. There's a higher staff to student ratio, and staff are implementing positive behavior level systems to encourage positive behavior choices. And that is continuing during distance learning. Teachers are continuing to implement the positive behavior level system, but it's being adjusted for more of a virtual learning setting. And teachers in this program also, and teachers and paraeducators are using Review 360 to track behavioral choices to ensure that students are making progress towards their social emotional learning goals. Next slide. And our 3 specialized programs. First, Desert Pathways High School program. This is a separate school setting, but within our district. And so this is a small school setting, and it's modeled after a non-public school type of program. And the students that participate in this program are focusing not just on academic progress, but also on behavioral progress. So students are receiving more intensive services in the area of counseling, in the area of social emotional skill development. We have psychologists and therapists on site on a daily basis that support the students. And district-wide, we implement a program known as the Boys Town Classroom Management System, which is really strong on teaching social skills, encouraging self-development, self-monitoring, and of course, helping to motivate students to continue to progress. And during distance learning, again, the positive behavior level systems being implemented, but of course, it's being modified for a virtual learning environment. But it's still focusing on teaching students self-monitoring skills, including parental input, and still using the token economy system to encourage positive behavior choices. Next slide. Okay, our Pathways to Success program. This program functions as a separate program, but it's located on the campus of Palmdale High School. So these students are able to utilize the Palmdale High School campus as well, even though it sort of functions as a separate program. But this program is also a small program, and it's modeled after a non-public school type of setting. And the students in this program are students that need focus or intensive services, not just in the area of functional academics, but also in social skills development. So again, this program has a high staff to student ratio to make sure that students are receiving adequate support throughout the school day. Again, in this program, we utilize the positive behavior level system to ensure that students are making progress towards their goals. And also we utilize the support of a BCBA, which is a behavior specialist, to make sure that behavior management techniques are being used adequately and that students continue to make progress towards their behavioral goals. And so during distance learning, again, there was an increased focus on parent-teacher collaboration and consultation to ensure students continue to progress through the virtual setting. Again, the staff are utilizing the Reviews 360 program to track progress towards IEP goals, make sure accommodations are being provided, making sure that behavior intervention plan, behavioral areas of focus are being addressed. And of course, students are learning to access technology using functional digital literacy programs such as Google Classroom and Unique to continue progress during the virtual setting. Next slide. In our ERICS program, currently through this program, we are serving 124 students district-wide, and this program provides more intensive individual counseling, still addressing social emotional goals, but the service is going to be more significant than what we would consider typical counseling being provided through the IEP process. So services are provided at a higher frequency and duration and tend to be more intense in the service. During or through this program, parents are also able to receive parent counseling as determined necessary by the IEP team. But that parent counseling is focusing on how to service and how to support their student better and understand their student's disability and understand their child's social emotional needs better. Through this program, we have a lot of community agency collaboration to make sure there's a continuity of care for our students. And also this program oversees any RTC placement that is necessary for a student in our district. And again, during distance learning, the service continues to be provided at the same frequency and duration that's in a student's current IEP. Next slide. Now, during distance learning, our teachers are busy working, developing distance learning plans for every student with an IEP. So that means 3,865 plans are currently being developed. And the goal of these plans is to make sure that there still continues to be rigorous academic instruction provided. But the plan is a tool for the staff to document how the IEP goal is going to be, or goals are going to be addressed during distance learning. And so these plans are being developed in collaboration with the parent and the student when appropriate to make sure that families understand as well how services will be provided during this virtual program. Next slide. And our parent supports. Here's a list of supports that are geared specifically to our parents that have students in special education. Some of these are specific to distance learning, but some are just services that we provide on a regular basis. So we're increasing that direct contact with our parents. Of course, we have our amazing site teams that continue to provide support to parents when needed to make sure that their concerns are being addressed. We developed a distant learning website for parents back in March, actually. We continue to develop that to make sure that parents have access to resources. And of course, we continue to implement the facilitated IEP process. Now we've taken it virtually. So all of our meetings are being held virtually. Next slide. And here's some of the teacher supports that we've provided recently. Of course, we have trainings for our special education staff throughout the school year. Recently, we held our annual special education conference. It's a yearly tradition. We've been doing it probably about 13 years now. And but this was our first year that the entire two-day conference was virtual. So we had approximately 650 staff members participate in our conference. It was very well received, and the 2 days of training focused on developing all of our special education staff. We talked about wellness in addition to helping to prepare them for distance learning. Also, we do our yearly training with our new teachers that are coming into our district that will be providing special education instruction. We also developed a teacher cadre within our SFS program for looking at curriculum development. And of course, you can see the various trainings there that we've provided virtually to make sure that our teachers and our support staff continue to be able to provide appropriate services to our students. Next slide. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the special education program and services being provided.
Thank you, Dr. Shute. We appreciate your presentation. Thank you for being with us this evening. Are there any questions?
Hi, Dr. Schultz. This is Dr. Ruffin. Great presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Do we have a, recently there was information in the media about, I hope I'm quoting it right. I think it was Galvin Newsom or some local or state official that is thinking about in the next few weeks or months about phasing in our special education students. Do we have a projected phase-in plan for our SPED students?
We have not picked an actual date yet. However, district-wide, we are starting that conversation. We are going to start by making sure that we survey our parents, make sure that they are aware of services that will be provided, making sure that they are comfortable and ensuring that they know that their students are safe. So yes, we are starting those conversations.
Okay, and then there's an item that's coming up about a program that has a lot of special education language, and I'm not sure if you're going to be around to later to answer some questions about that too. It's a program or that we're supposed to be discussing for a bid for later. Are you going to be around later to?
Yes, I will. I'll be here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shute. We appreciate your presentation and that you were with us this evening. So moving forward, we are at D, the Antelope Valley Schools Transportation Report Update. Mr. Hopkins.
Yes, we held a board meeting this last week, and the primary thing that was done is the board approved the MOU with CSCA and the drivers for being able to provide services for certainly this semester and for the school year for all 3 school districts. And that was quite important to get that MOU approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving forward, we are at D from AVTA, Mr. Dan Chai. Mr. Chai. Is Mr. Chai with us this evening?
Ms. McGrady, he should be. I'm not sure.
I'm here. I'm
Okay.
here. Can you
All
hear me
right.
now? Yeah, I'm not the most technologically advanced person, so this virtual stuff kind of throws me for a loop. You have a couple of things coming up to vote on, and I'd like to comment on those that relate to my people. You have an MOU about distance learning, and you have the TA, the contract vote. All right, I'll be brief here. For both of those votes, and they were separate votes, we've never had the level of response to any election in my 20 years doing this that we had to those 2 documents. Not only did they pass with a majority of my members. Most votes in my tenure have been a plurality of members. These votes were passed by 86 to 95%, but they were passed by far more than 50% of the membership. The MOU to talk about distance learning and then the blended model, that was 40 to 50 hours of work between my bargaining team and the district's bargaining team. We met 5 times. We met in person and we met virtually. And those were intense conversations, and they were professional conversations. And then we sent the results out to a vote, and they were overwhelmingly approved by my membership. I'd like to thank Mr. Neal and his team for their work on this. and really their flexibility in meeting with us. Sometimes we could meet together and sometimes we had to meet virtually. And it speaks to the district's really their willingness to meet with labor and talk about things that are very important. All right. And I wanted to share that with you. And that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Shy. We appreciate that you took the trouble and time to come in and talk with us this evening. From CSEA.
Thank you, Mr. Brady.
You're welcome. Thank you. From CSEA, we have Mr. Kyle Frazier with us tonight. And while he's getting on, I'd just like to state that our sincere condolences go to Karen White and her family for the loss of a family member. So we're sorry, Karen, and sorry that you're not with us this evening. Mr. Frazier.
Yes, can you hear me?
Thank you.
All right, board, cabinet, and members in attendance, let me say good evening. My name is Kyle Frazier, and I am the Vice President of CSEA Chapter 612. I'm stepping in tonight for our President, Karen White, to talk to you on behalf of CSEA. First, I want to thank the personnel and HR departments of the district. Thank you for working with our membership and granting work from home contracts to those members and positions that can work from home. Thank you for working with our members that cannot work from home yet, who have children at home to care for. Thank you for finding a schedule that works for both them and the district. It is greatly appreciated. I understand that we have close to 300 CSEA members now working from home, either fully or partially, and plenty more placing their requests in every day. I want to state tonight that last month, our chapter held 2 meetings, inviting all of the candidates for Trustee Area 2 and all the candidates for Trustee Area 3 to those meetings. After listening to those candidates who attended our meetings and to those who answered our questions, our members voted and the majority decided on endorsing Danita Wynn for Trustee Area 3 and Jill McGrady for Trustee Area 2. We are looking forward to having all 5 seats on the board filled once again and getting back to servicing these children that we all are here for in the first place. Tonight, we have 2 items for CSEA on the agenda. We have our contract, and once again, we have the COVID-19 MOU. Both the contract and the MOU were negotiated by us with the district, brought to our membership, voted on and passed by the members, approved by our 610 process in the Fresno field office, and now is here for your final approval. Both the contract and the MOU provide safeties and securities to our members and their families. These are the safeties and securities that allow our members to go to work with confidence each day, with that smile on their face, and allow these children to feel safe and secure in a happy environment. I am looking forward to both of those being approved here tonight. I will end by quoting the words of our association president, Mr. Ben Valdepena, from a cover page in the LA Times this Labor Day weekend. The state budget passed in June provides full funding for California public schools this year because the leaders in Sacramento understand that schools cannot operate safely and effectively, either in person or through distance learning, without the support of classified staff. Thank you for your time and take care.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. We appreciate your words and thank you for being with us this evening. We're moving forward with public opinions, comments from the floor for agendized items. I believe we have one, but that will be read when that agendized item comes up. So next we have public comments from the floor for non-agendized items. I believe we have one.
Yes, the comment this evening is from Vivian. Hear ye, AVUHSD Superintendent and the derailers of board, which include Dr. Ruffin and Ms. Perel. Again, I ask that you stop your sarcasm and rude behavior, Ms. McGrady, when it comes to your unprofessional, childish, disrespectful behavior towards Dr. Ruffin, simply because you condone the lies and theft going up under your nose, and many other members of our district. You and your cronies will be forwarding these meeting comments that you dislike to the famous Julie Drake of the AV Press that doesn't represent the demographics of the Black and Brown community the districts have a job because of. I am very appalled our district doesn't mind our kids of color not having equity and diversity. Stop acting like the highest held office in the United States of America that perpetuates lies and hatred, as you've recently heard, allowing hundreds of thousands to die because of so-called white privilege. It is okay for him, with him, for a killing season on our youth and adults of color, and you who are complicit are the racist. Stop it. All of this because of Dr. Ruffin shining the light on the truth on our district superintendent, that I felt in the beginning he would step up to the plate, even as he and others ignore the cries and pains of parents and teachers who are afraid and intimidated to tell the district anything, such as kids being called the N-word by Coach DJ Hines of Highland varsity basketball team, or the teachers who wish to remain at home to teach but must use the Family Medical Leave Act because the union and supervisors may consider them as insubordinates, even now knowing the President of the United States knew how dangerous this epidemic was from the start. Some of you want to keep acting like Dr. Ruffin and those who tell the truth are bad news. Well, look in the mirror, do like our young, educated, white, brown, and others, especially the Blacks, are doing for the continuous Black lives being killed from the hatred coming from this president, that you're riding on his bandwagon the way you're doing, Dr. Vieira. Stand up, let the truth be known, because the world is watching. Stop drinking Trump's Kool-Aid. It's time to get in good trouble. To the young lady wanting the union MOU to pass, if it's not good and right for one person, then it's not right for none. Can't we all just get along? That concludes the comments for this evening.
Thank you. We're moving forward with educational services with a public hearing. We're going to open, conduct, and close the public hearing to allow for public comment regarding adoption of the 2020-21 Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, the Learning Continuity Plan, LCP, for the Antelope Valley Union High School District, AVUHSD. And it is, what's the time? 7:39. Comments from staff. Mr. Nehan.
Thank you, Ms. McGrady. At this point, I'd like to ask Dr. Kelly to join us, and he's going to present the LCP and the work that's gone into it. So Dr. Kelly, it's all yours.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, board and cabinet. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share with you a new version of LCAP called the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. And while the acronym may be the same, the expectations, the timelines are quite different in focus. Next slide, please. So to appease any kind of confusion, we're going to call it the Learning Continuity Plan, or the LCP. This plan replaces the actual LCAP, the Local Control and Accountability Plan that was in development in the spring of 2019. I'm sorry, in 2020, and it takes its place. And essentially what it is high-level snapshots of major actions and activities that were defined in Senate Bill 98. And I have a little index there of each of the sections that are in the document attached, the draft that's attached with you guys. Next slide, please. We won't go over every single category, but we'll go in a little bit of depth in some of these specific categories where there's actions related to in-person instruction, distance learning, pupil learning loss, mental health and social emotional well-being, as well as procedures for tiered re-engagement strategies. Next slide, please. And so similar to the normal LCAP, these all start with stakeholder engagement. And so we were required to engage teachers, principals, administrators, other school staff, parents, students, bargaining units, which we've done through countless surveys, through many Zoom and Google Meet meetings, and then most recently with our District English Learner Advisory Council on August 28th, and the Parent Advisory Council last week on September 4th, which helped us to develop this draft of a plan for you to consider over the next week when we'll come back to you for approval. Next slide, please. So in-person instruction, and some of this will be redundant because this plan, unlike the old LCAP, talks about what we did during the spring of the COVID shutdown, what we're doing now, and what we plan to do in the future. And so some of these slides may have overlap, which is actually good because it means that everybody knows what's going on. So the section 4 in-person learning in the LCP requires us to kind of explain what that would look like, with the caveat of this continuity of service, where sometimes students may be able to come to school, and then if they have to quarantine, they need to be able to do school at home. And so our in-person instructional model, which we are not yet able to implement, but hopefully we'll be able to implement soon, is a cohort where students take 3 classes per day. And cohort 1 goes Monday and Tuesday on campus, where cohort 2 goes Thursday and Friday, with all students doing distance learning on Wednesdays, and access to their teachers every day in the afternoon. Next slide, please. Distance learning, which is what we're actually in the middle of doing, is again, it's a cohorted model so as to not overwhelm students and families, where the students engage in 3 periods per day, other than Wednesday when they engage in all 6 periods. They receive live virtual instruction, synchronous and asynchronous instruction, and have access to their teachers from 1 to 3 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. Next slide, please. Some of these specific summary statements that are made in the plan that you guys have ask some historic question. And so some of these are static and some of them are dynamic. And so I'll shoot through them. When the school closures came upon us, we were able to track student participation through Google Classes. And from March through the end of June, or through June and the end of the school year, we were able to engage 92.4% of students. At that time, we checked out 6,767 Chromebooks with 425 hotspots to accommodate that transition to distance learning in the spring. And I know Mr. Nehan shared at one of the last meetings that while many exams were canceled, College Board continued to give AP exams to our students. And it was fortuitous that they had signed up for these exams in the fall, because typically it would not have gone as smooth had that foundation not started in the fall. And we were fortunate enough to have 2,350 AP exams passed, which is the highest number in our district's history. We were able to graduate 4,282 students, with over 10,000 students attending virtual summer school. And then while we're doing summer school, planning for, this hybrid learning model, whether it be in school or in person, we gave out over 4,000 hours of professional development, customized to teachers and what they said their needs were, whether it was creating a Google Classroom or breakout rooms, or using Screencastify or digital textbooks, all kinds of things. So having given out all of that stuff, we only had the seniors return Chromebooks and hotspots because they were graduating, and let the underclassmen hold on to the Chromebooks and hotspots so that they didn't get lost, and it was simpler for the families. So in addition to what I had already said, we handed out another 4,700 Chromebooks and 800 hotspots for the fall, with 12,400 Chromebooks and 1,000 hotspots in the pipeline. And those things are going like hotcakes. When I had meetings with the DLAC, they were so excited about these hotspots, and we were able to even clarify, there's some homes that may have internet, but it's spotty internet, or they may have multiple students who are pulling on the bandwidth. And so when they found out they were able to get additional hotspots to speed up the accuracy, they were very, very happy. And students continue to check out Chromebooks and hotspots even today. The last thing that's updated, last time it was about 600,000, but we continue to serve food to students and families at a rapid rate. Kudos to Joe Cook and his team. We are up to 835,296 meals. And again, just a testament to the ability to adapt quickly to the new needs of our community. Next slide, please. Thank you. One of the new sections that is not in the normal LCAP that is in the LCP is this concept of pupil learning loss. So there's an acknowledgement that distance learning isn't necessarily for everyone. And even if it is, there's a lot going on in the world that is distracting and interfering with students' learning. And so we need to address pupil learning. And so we did this through a qualitative and a quantitative approach. So qualitatively, we began by asking students, due to the current circumstances, are you ahead in your learning, right where you should be in your learning, or behind in your learning? And you'll see that in terms of learning loss, about 20% of our students, or 1 in 5, feel like they're starting to fall behind. 71% feel like they're right where they should be, and 10% feel like they're actually getting ahead. And then when asking the question just in general, how's distance learning going? You see that 18% feel favorably about it, either saying that's awesome or I like it a lot. 45% say it's okay, and 36% really not liking it, and some hating it. And in some of the students' narrative responses, it's really sad because they miss the interaction with their teachers, they miss the interaction with their peers and their administrators and their staffs. So, you know, I can't say it enough that the feedback that we've gotten from all stakeholders is the desire to go back to school on campus as soon as safely possible. Next slide, please. And so in terms of, we asked an open-ended question of the students, what could the school provide to help you get caught up if you feel like you're falling behind? And many of them talked about customized tutoring. And so I took both the DLAC and the Parent Advisory Council through Power School and where they could access tutor.com. And so like I told them, I'll show you on the left upper hand side is the tab that they would click when they log into their parent portal. And then they click the Princeton Review Homework Help for live tutors. And then this launches them into this browser. Next slide, please. And so this kind of just takes them step by step with what this service provides. Fortunately, we were an early investor in this software. I just wrote a letter of recommendation for the service for LAUSD because they're looking at something to meet the same needs. I think it's a need that a lot of students need. And so through multiple funding sources, we're able to provide this to our students at no cost and as much as they need. And so, and they can, once they get to know the tutors, they can request them over and over. They can keep a transcript so that they remember what they learned. They can share files and get feedback on essays within 12 hours. And just this month, just the month of August, we had over 591 sessions, and each of those sessions can range from 20 minutes to an hour. And 70% of that is in math. And so that doesn't surprise me at all, as math is typically been difficult for our students. And so the students are using it. They give it a 98% satisfaction ranking. And so we shared this in English and in Spanish as well to continue to make this resource accessible to help mitigate learning loss. Next slide, please. And then another section of the LCP deals with mental health and social emotional well-being. And while prior plans might focus on social emotional well-being, this one is very more specific in calling out mental health. And so our student services department has created a website, which I've hyperlinked in there for folks in the community to be able to see, and then just took a screenshot that shows, you know, it can be as severe as a suicide prevention hotline to as customized as speaking to one of our 4 social workers that work for our district. Furthermore, it goes into some social emotional well-being. And sometimes that's as simple as finding ways to get outside, to get some fresh air, which has been especially hard in the last couple of weeks with all the fires. But there's a lot going on in the world, and our kids typically are able to lean on each other and lean on their support systems. And And so we're very cognizant, and Student Services is doing a great job in terms of reaching out to students, and which will lead me into the next slide. So for students who are struggling with engaging in their learning. Now, students could not be engaging in their distance learning for several reasons. Some could be because of a lack of technology, in which case we provide Chromebooks and hotspots, and we'll even deliver it to their house. Sometimes it's just that they hate it. They don't learn that way, and they need a little bit of encouragement. And so as these students are being brought to our attention from their teachers, and then through some of the stats that we're running, we can reach out with our At Promise coordinators to touch base with the students about how they're doing. Sometimes it's a pep talk, sometimes it's really just helping them understand the logistics of technology. We've got CAWs who have been doing home visits. And I can speak for one school. I was just speaking to the principal at Knight High School, and they had, we just finished 4 weeks of school, and they've already made 1,000 phone calls to students to meet them where they're at, to help them access their learning, and to both the learning side of it and the human side of it with social emotional needs. And so the at-risk coordinators, or the at-promise coordinators that we had last year in those student support centers, are still doing the same things. They're just doing it in a distance environment. And so each of the sites has a tiered re-engagement approach, starting with, the least restrictive to the most restrictive. And so with that, you can take me to the next slide. Next steps is to receive any kind of feedback for consideration at this public hearing. We just received some recommendations from LACO through their pre-review process. We received that yesterday, and so we're going to look through some of those things and make sure that the language is clear and we meet what they're hoping for. And so any revisions that we need to make based upon any kind of feedback or LACO recommendations we'll do over the next week, at which point we'll bring it back to the board to be voted on for approval on 9/17. The deadline across the state is 9/30. And so in the sequence of our board meetings, this is what worked best. And I do have to just take a minute and give kudos to our ed services team, to personnel, to business services, and to student services. Really was a team effort to basically put this thing together in a month. The template was released at 11:59 p.m. on July 31st, and without directions for another week. And so everybody's been working really, really hard to put this thing together with as much stakeholder involvement as possible to present to you guys tonight. And then once it's been approved, within 5 days, I submit it to LACO. And then by October 30th, the county may, and that doesn't mean that they will, they may submit recommendations. If this occurs, we're required to review those recommendations in a public hearing within 15 days of reception. But those are simply recommendations and are not required to be added, only to be considered. And part of the reason we participate in the pre-review process is to get it all right the first time so that there's no comments on the end. And so with that, next slide. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the district's LCP before we go into Academies of the Antelope Valley's LCP.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. We appreciate you bringing that and all the work that you and your team have put together to put this together for us. Do we have any questions from the board?
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm not really sure if this is questions, but more so to give a little bit more context and more support for the community to have a better understanding and more transparency about the LCP as well. The state board meeting was held in early July, and that meeting focused on the ways in which local educational agencies could prepare for the fall reopening. It's clear that our learning and teaching spaces are different this year, and to support the differences in the delivery, the resource of the learning continuity and attendance plan as it is outlined in the Senate Bill 98 it replaces the LCAP for this year. And we should be clear that the Antelope Valley Union High School District received approximately $29 million in COVID funding. So this is what this plan is looking at, how we're spending $29 million for the community to be aware. With that in mind, that $29 million is looking at with the deep description of this plan is describing how this continuity plan is providing in-person learning with distant learning programs, which means what it looks like to phase in the plans that were discussed. It's the plans that is addressing the learning loss for the 2019-20 loss and the 2020-21 school year. It's also looking at specific strategies for the English language learners, for our foster youth, for our special education students, for our homeless, and our students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch. And like you mentioned, it's also looking at our students' mental health and social emotional well-being. And I think it's important to say that because this is a pandemic situation, and this is why this is unique that we're talking about that. It's very important too that we mention that this school district services 80% minoritized youth, 62% Latinx, and 18%, 17% African-American youth. So the majority of this community is minoritized students. So it's really important that we understand what our social capital is and why it's important we understand who we're teaching and why it's important where we're providing these services to our at Hope students. So I wanted to make it very clear that when we talk about these students and what their needs are, why are we structuring these services the way that we are? So thank you so much for this presentation. But I do want it to be clear that our district received $29 million for this year to support the academics and the learning spaces of these students. Thank you.
Sure, and Dr. Ruffin, if I could, I'll just make one correction there. Because the old LCAP, we're required to account for just about every dime that we have in terms of the targeted and supplemental dollars, as well as base grant and other federal categorical dollars. That same requirement is not in this. And so in the areas where it talks about actions and associated costs, some of those actions are funded with general funds. Some of those are funded with Title I. Some of those are funded with the learning loss mitigation funds. And so this plan is not, in the sense, a complete accounting for the $22+ million that we've received through the learning loss mitigation. But there will be pieces of that fund in there. So I want to make sure that if somebody's looking through to see if it equals 29 million, it will not, nor was it the intent of the LCP to do that.
Right, but it'll be explained as we go further, because I think that's a part of the discussion going forward further, right?
In what sense? I'm sorry, I can't hear you anymore.
I'm sorry.
Oh, there you go. I got you.
I think that Mr. Hawkins added a budget piece that he's going to explain forward further tonight in the board meeting.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, for sure, there's going to be a specific accounting for those funds. I just didn't want there to be the confusion, because otherwise this LCP would be 150 pages longer than it is right now.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay, hearing none. There were no questions, no comments from the public. So we are closing the public hearing at 8:01. We are at B, public hearing, open, conduct, and close public hearing to allow for public comment regarding the adoption of 2020-21 Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, Learning Continuity Plan, or LCP, for the Academies of the Antelope Valley, AAV. We will open the hearing at 8:01. Comments from staff.
Yeah, so essentially similar to the traditional LCAP, because it's a dependent charter, we do this hand in hand with Mr. Berryman and his folks over at Academies of the Antelope Valley. And so many of the actions were the same, but I did want to point out one slide where there was specific differences between AAV and the rest of the students of the AVUHSD is in terms of their feelings about learning loss. And so I shared with you in the bottom slides are what I've already shared with you for all students. And so the top slides are only for the students who attend Academies of the Antelope Valley. And you'll see an 8% swing between those who feel ahead and those who feel behind. And so in talking to some of the stakeholder groups, all of our students at AAV have always had one-to-one technology. And so I think they were a little bit more equipped to this 21st century type of learning style. And then when you look over in terms of how is distance learning going, again, 22% more kids so almost a quarter more kids at AAV enjoy it versus 13% less in terms of disliking it. So, and that obviously impacts some of the ways that we spend money. So for example, students at AAV may not need Chromebooks or hotspots because they've always received those, but they may be interested in different kind of softwares, technologies. I can speak for one of the prep academies. Students in geometry received a kit to take home, a consumable kit with different kind of shapes and polygons and whatnot that they maybe didn't have before to allow for hands-on learning instead of just learning that's taking place from a screen. So other than that, they go hand in hand. The other thing that's different as well is when it's a traditional LCAP, the board approves the charter's LCAP and then it never goes to the county. Because of these unprecedented times, the AAV COVID-19 plan, which was from a couple months ago, and their LCP will, once approved, will also go to the county for feedback and review. And so that's kind of different and new. And so I don't know if that's a trend that's going to be coming forward, but I wanted to have you be fully informed of what you have ahead of you.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Are there any comments from the board?
Yes. Dr. Kelly, when you share the data or when, or Dr. Vieira, could you have your cabinet when they share the data, if they could provide how many students actually took the survey so that we can get a clear understanding of what the data is actually representing?
Yeah, I can even give you an idea of the number of students that participated in this.
Exactly. And also, you know, for the several board meetings, the board is not getting the presentations ahead of time. I mean, we did receive a few of the presentations tonight ahead of time, but like this presentation right here, I'm actually taking pictures as you're going through because I don't have this presentation in front of me. So it would be nice if we can get it before the board meeting, but if we can get the actual numbers of how many students actually participated, like how many students is making up this 38% that we're looking at.
Yeah, so that's 1,574 students. And it's actually proportionate to the size of the campuses that gave the survey. And
right, and we don't have that information.
Right, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
When that information is ready, prior to the agenda going out, and that will be passed on to the board. It's not always ready at that time, though the backup for this particular item was given. This presentation right here was continued to be worked on during this week. So whatever information we do have, we'll be happy to pass on to the board and send with the agenda at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have no comments from the public, so we will close the public hearing at 8:06. Thank you, Dr. Kelly. We appreciate the information.
My pleasure.
Forward.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Educational services, public hearing to ensure availability of textbooks and instructional materials, Education Code Section 60119. Public hearing opens at 8:06. Comments from staff. Mr. Nehan, I believe you're up again.
Yes, thank you. So considering the uniqueness of these times, instead of distributing textbooks on campus, each site had a number of days where students were invited on campus to check out all of their textbooks. In addition to that, we checked out technology, Chromebooks, and hotspots to those students that need it. Every student, we have sufficient textbooks, we have sufficient instructional materials, textbooks, and technology. And from the best of our ability, we ascertain that every student that has them, that needs them, has them. But we have also, in order to supplement during this distance learning time, we provided digital companions to all of the books that didn't currently have one. So that'd be health, life and physical sciences, and our foreign language. Our social studies, our math and ELA adoptions already had digital companions, but now students all have digital access as well as hard access to these to the instructional materials through their PowerSchool portal. We have sufficient science lab materials and supplies when students return to campus. We have not distributed any of those to students for experiments at home. Students are covering their science experiments through virtual projects and experiments.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, there are no comments from the public, and so we will close this hearing at 8:08. Okay, we are at D, Educational Services Adopt Resolution number 2020-2104 to ensure availability of textbooks and instructional materials, Education Code Section 60119. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the attached resolution number 2020-2104. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. A second? I'll second it. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Ms. Perrell, how do you vote? Aye. Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Rush is absent. I vote yes. That's a 3 in favor. It passes. And Mr. Johnson votes yes. We are moving forward to E, Educational Services Public Hearing regarding Instructional Materials Funding Realignment Program Certification. We will open the public hearing at 8:09. Comments from staff. Mr. Nehan.
And so this is in companion to these material sufficiency. This is just declaring that all of our materials, instructional materials, are aligned with current standards, and they are.
Thank you. Any questions from the board or comments? Hearing none, and there are no comments from the public, so we will close the public hearing at 8:10. We move forward to F, Educational Services Instructional Materials Funding Realignment Program Certification. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees certify that each pupil in the Antelope Valley Union High School District has been provided with the standards-aligned textbook or basic instructional materials in each of the core areas. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. A second? I will second it. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Ms. Perrell?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Rush is absent and Ms. McGrady is yes. It passes with a 3 vote and Mr. Johnson voted yes. We are at G, Educational Services Review Proposed Revisions to Board Policy Administration Regulation, BPAR 4113 assignment and BPAR 4119.4219.43/4319.43 universal precautions. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees review proposed revisions to BP/AR as presented. Educational Services Review of Curriculum Guide, Urban Scholars is a first read discussion. It is recommended that that was a first read. Do we have any comments on it or any discussion about the board policy on G? Thank you. Hearing none, we'll move forward to H, Educational Services Review of Curriculum Guide for Urban Scholars. This is a first read and discussion. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees receive the attached curriculum guide for review. Any comments or discussion? I would like to just say that I checked and it looks like an outstanding program and I look forward to its implementation. Moving forward to 8 personnel services action items. We will open, conduct, and close public hearing regarding AVUHSD CSEA collective bargaining tentative agreement. We'll open the hearing at 8:12. Comments from staff. Mr. Neal, I believe this is you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. McGrady. And board members, as you know, that each spring we begin our contract negotiations with our labor groups. And you have before you tonight, this is the tentative agreement, the contract tentative agreement that we've set with CSEA members on their negotiating teams. And this is for the 2020-21 school year. For this year with CSEA, the entire contract was open. However, both CSEA and district labor teams brought forth only certain articles that we really wanted to review and address. And as we began moving into the spring and into the summer and dealing with the issues of school closures, both teams felt that it was probably more beneficial to, on a number of items, go status quo. And so we did that with our salary and health benefits. We did address certain articles that dealt with changes in law, especially in the areas of probationary employees. So we addressed those in the language as well. And we spent most of our time in the negotiations dealing with the reopening COVID MOU. And again, I would want to also thank CSCA. I know that Mr. Frazier mentioned the negotiations that we've had, not only formal meetings, but many informal meetings, many discussions in informal settings, and we're able to move through a number of these items rather quickly. So this is an action item for you in the acceptance of the tentative agreement between the district and CSEA for the 2020-21 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Are there any questions from the board? We have, hearing none, we have no comments from the public, so we will close the hearing at 8:14. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the collective bargaining tentative agreement with CSEA as presented. May I have a motion to get it on the floor?
Motion.
Thank you. I believe that's Ms. Perrell. Second? I will second it. Any discussion? Hearing none, how do you vote, Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Ms. Perrell, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes, and Mr. Rush is absent. Mrs. McGrady votes yes. That's it passes with 3 votes, and Mr. Johnson votes yes. We are at collective bargaining MOU regarding COVID-19 environment. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the agreement with CSEA as presented. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Ruffin. Any discussion?
I'm glad that the bargaining unit went in and considered the things that the board discussed.
Any other comments? Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Ms. Perrell?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Rush is absent. Ms. McGrady votes yes. It passes with a 3 vote, and Mr. Johnson votes yes. We are at D, open, conduct, and close a public hearing regarding Antelope Valley Union High School District AVTA collective bargaining tentative agreement. Open the hearing at 8:16. Comments from staff, Mr. Neal.
Yes, just as with CSCA, this is our contract openers for AVTA, and we began our negotiation sessions last spring. And again, these are our annual contract negotiation sessions. For AVTA, we just had a couple of openers. Each party had the ability to bring forward two openers regarding articles in the contract, as well as salary and benefits. And again, both parties agreed it would be beneficial to us if we were able to basically go status quo and wrap up our negotiations quickly so that we could focus on the MOU regarding the opening under COVID environment. So this is for the contract negotiations for the 20 and 21 school year with our AVTA labor group.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, there are no comments from the public, so we will close the public hearing at 8:17. Moving forward to E, it is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the collective bargaining tentative agreement with AVTA as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Ruffin. And any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Ms. Perrell?
Aye.
Aye, Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Rush is absent. Mrs. McGrady votes yes. It passes with a 3 vote, and the student board member, Mr. Johnson, voted yes. We are at F. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the MOU with AVTA as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. A second? I will second it. Any discussion?
Yes, I have some discussion, Board Clerk. I am looking at page 5, and I want to give some context to this. I think that I agree with Mr. Shy, and I think that this is a very well written MOU. I think it was well written. And I am definitely going to advocate for the parents, the students in this community. I'm looking at page 5 of the IEP meetings. This is a bedroom community. We have 80% of the students in this community that are minoritized students. We have parents that travel up and down this 14 community, up this 14 freeway. And I see here it says IEP meetings will be scheduled during the workday. What is definitive in that language, it says it will be. I'm not sure if there's any room for any flexibility for opportunities for IEPs to be held after 3 o'clock. When I looked at the schedule for the workday for these COVID hours, the workday is ending at 2:30 and 3 o'clock. When I talk to parents in the community, some of them that live in the community, not even the ones that travel down to 14, get off at 4 o'clock. If they can't get off at between the work hours, and there are some teachers who are willing to get compensated past 3 o'clock to work maybe 3 to 4 or 3 to 5, this contract doesn't give any flexibility for them to even be compensated within those hours. I'm not sure if AVTA is willing to put some language in there to compensate that, because what it says here is the IP meetings will be scheduled during the workday. And that seems like that says that only. Also on page 7, it says grades and education code. On page 7 under grades, grades will be assigned based on teacher discretion pursuant to education code. I have gotten so many emails, so many calls from parents within the community based off of last semester when correspondence came out from our district in regards to grading policies. I've spoken to different staff members about inconsistencies across our district from school to school about our grading policies. I looked within what was posted online. I have not seen an education code that speaks to teachers having discretion about grading. I would like for our board or this information to be provided to the board. These are the only two issues that I have with this MOU at this time. Other than that, I think that it's well written. If this information could be provided to the board, I would be in full agreement of this, but I think that I'm confident that there needs to be room and flexibility for IEP meetings to be held out, even to be offered outside of the workday, because this doesn't seem like a form of equity for parents who cannot take off of work during the workday, or for teachers who would be willing to have meetings or work or make extra money outside of the traditional work hours, if that's an option, or even administrative staff. And I don't know, maybe that's a part of the agreement. If it is, even if that's information that somebody can share with me right now, maybe you guys already agreed to that.
Dr. Ruffin, I can share with you a little bit that this language that we have here regarding IEPs, that has been our practice. We set up and schedule IEPs during the work day. Now, we do have quite a bit of flexibility currently, since we are in a virtual setting, and we are able to work around some of our parents' schedules with that. We do have IEPs that do go long. So a number of our staff members will stay in IEPs past that workday, especially those that are counselors and psychologists and teachers on special assignment, as well as caseloads. But that has been our practice, and so we did reflect that in the MOU. In regards to
wait, go back and say that, because it's not reflected in the MOU. This is definitive. It says it will, so it doesn't give language to say it doesn't say may. You know what I mean? It doesn't say teachers may work. It just says that they will hold IEP meetings during the workday. It doesn't give a caveat to say teachers can have an option. And this is it's our responsibility as board members to come into an agreement with the teachers union. So we don't want to be in a position where we're strong arming our teachers if that's not something that they agree to. And we also want to give them the flexibility if that is something that they would be interested in doing. Does that make sense?
Yes, and just to be clear, I did not mention that that there was flexibility for teachers to do that. We did say within the MOU, which was an agreed upon statement with both the district as well as the labor group, that the IEPs will be held during the workday. What I did mention is that we do have people that are not part of the bargaining unit that do work with those parents outside of the workday should IEPs go long. So this was, you're right, this language is in this agreement. It has been our practice, and this was agreed upon by both district and AVTA leadership.
Any other comments or questions?
Is there any information about the grading? Do you have the education code that supports the grading policy, or could you provide the grading practices for the Antelope Valley Union High School District to the board? Because like I said, it's inconsistent from school to school. The practices, even from Little Rock to Knight to Highland to Quartz Hill, has all been different. There's no universal practices across the district. So,
Presiding Officer McGrady, this is Jay Furno. It's actually Education Code Section 49066. And it provides that when grades are given for any course of instruction taught in a school district, the grade given by each pupil shall be the grade determined by the teacher of the course, and the determination of the pupil's grade by the teacher in the absence of clerical or mechanical mistake, fraud, bad faith, or incompetency shall be final.
So Dr.
that's-
Vieira, could you work with your staff with making sure that that education code is put in this MOU? And I would like to table this until it's appropriately stated.
Presiding Officer McGrady, it is abundantly clear that teachers have the absolute right to decide a student's grade absent clerical, mechanical mistake, fraud, bad faith, or incompetency.
Okay, thank you. And then also this has been negotiated already, correct?
I'm Mrs. Board Clerk, I'm not questioning the negotiation of this. Like I said, I think that they did an amazing job negotiating it. I don't think that the transparency is here in this document.
I would add, just for the board's edification, there is approximately, and Mr. Shai alluded to this, there's approximately, I believe it's close to 900 and a little bit members of AVTA. They had a vast majority of their members vote. They had over 670 employees vote, which is about a little over 75% of the members voted. And in this agreement, of those members that voted, it was, I believe it was 86% of those members approved of this, and they were given the opportunity to read through this. When we do say pursuant to the ed code, that is the ed code that we refer to. Teachers know that it is their responsibility, their ability to determine the grades of their students.
Right. And again, you're asking for the board. So you're asking for the board to approve something, and you're talking about communication between teachers. And you want the board to approve communication that the board is not aware of. And I'm hearing that this is a practice. It seems like this is a practice within this district that has just kind of been lockstep, that there's no transparency. So I'm not the only person that's on this call that's trying to get this board to be more transparent so that teachers can communicate with community members, that they can communicate with parents and others as well. So because their understanding of the language is not universal to everyone that's on this call. So I don't know, and I could not find this education code. So I don't understand why it's a secret and why it can't be transparent in this MOU.
Well, and it is not a secret. I know Mr. Furnell shared with you that there's another problem. I don't even know why he's on this call once again, because he's not board approved, but that's a whole nother issue. But I do hear you. And so all I'm asking is for the clear transparency that is put in there. I'm not saying that I am in disagreement with all of the unit members who voted for this. That's not my problem. I'm asking for transparency in the content in what's written in the document so that it's clear. And I have the same issues in other things that are going to be brought up as we continue to go forward. It's the same issue. And as I was saying, this is an agreement between the district and the union, and that is an agreement between those two parties, and it's provided to you for your review and action on that. And we're happy to answer any questions for clarification of any language that is in here.
93% of the teachers voted for this, I believe. And then once it was negotiated, it was taken back to the labor union, and they voted to approve it. Any other questions? Hearing none, Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. Ms. Perrell, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Dr. Ruffin, how do you vote?
I would like to table it for the corrections in the language.
We have a motion on the board, on the floor.
I move to table this item for the correction in the language.
We have to complete the vote first, and then we would have to take a vote to table it. So how do you vote?
I put the motion on the table before we completed this, so then we would have to vote on this motion first.
We have
before
a
we do
motion,
that
we
motion.
can approve a second one already on the floor that we're working on.
There's a second motion on the table. This motion would trump the first motion that's on the table.
Calling for the vote, Dr. Ruffin.
I put a second motion on the table, Board Clerk.
Ready? This is Jay Fernell. I mean, if you just want to move this along, if you want to call for a second, I agree with you that it's out of order. But if you want to call for a second on the tabling and then a discussion and a vote, if it doesn't get 3 votes, then it isn't tabled and the vote will just go forward.
Okay, so we will, I believe what I heard is that you made a motion to table it, so we need a second. Hearing none, it fails. So we go back to the vote that we were working on. Mr. Johnson voted aye, Ms. Perrell voted aye. Dr. Ruffin, how do you vote?
Why you didn't second my motion? I second. I vote no.
No, Mr. Rush is absent and Mrs. McGrady votes yes. So it fails with a 2 for yes, 1 for no, and student board member voted yes. We are at 9, business services, conduct a public hearing for school facility needs analysis. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees open, conduct, and close the public hearing on resolution number 2020-2105. We'll open the public hearing at 8:33. Comments from staff. Mr. Hawkins, I believe this is yours.
Yes, I do believe we have a note from the public, and we should probably read that first.
Thank you. Could we have that read, please?
Yes, there's one comment this evening from Chris Courtney. Good afternoon, members of the board. It is my understanding that the board is planning on reviewing increasing the developer school's fees at tonight's meeting. I would like my email read at tonight's meeting and part of the record. I oppose any thought of doing this, especially in light of this past year's circumstances. As a parent and a developer, I am upset at this notion. As parents, we've been schooling our kids, not the school districts. This has been ongoing since March of this year. Online education is not education, and it certainly would never warrant an increase in school fees. Parents are paying to provide food and air conditioning at our private residences, while teachers are still scrambling to spend 15 to 30 minutes of online time with our kids and have their systems work. Considering everything is online, and it seems like it will be for the considerable future, the school district will not be needing to expand their facilities based on where we stand today. A fee increase simply cannot be supported, and if it is, it will only be challenged since it has no legal basis other than a flawed report prepared by a consultant hired by the school district rather than a true independent evaluation. When we come out of this COVID crisis, it is more likely that there will be more homeschooling or kids that have left to charter schools. Therefore, demand on AVUHSD facilities would be less, not more. Your study is flawed because it can't possibly take into consideration the real impact of this, but there are more indicators that point towards less demand on school facilities and staff and more demand on parents and homeschooling their kids. It is inappropriate and unethical for the school district to consider a school fee increase at this juncture. Any decision on this should be pushed off until a time when we can more accurately assess the needs of the district as COVID restrictions are relaxed and kids return to schools. But at this time, the only true indicator is that more kids will be studying at home, not in schools. So therefore, the district should have less facility demand and operating costs, not more. Please reconsider your intentions of increasing the school fees and at least defer any decision on these until next year when your situation can be more accurately assessed.
Thank you. Mr. Hawkins, do you have anything you'd like to say or add?
Yes, one, I would add that according to this note, it came from the senior project manager at Beezer Homes. They have a definite incentive because anytime a developer fee increases, it does increase the cost for the home. So the board tonight is being asked to approve a 15 square foot increase on new home construction. So on a 2,000 square foot house, this increase would be equal to $300. Most of the homes that are being built now in the AV are at $350,000 and up. So the percentage increase is incredibly small. Secondly, the board has an extensive study that was included in your board packet, and it's done by an independent outside company that specializes in this, and they know what they're doing, and they have recommended, or no, I'm sorry, the fee schedules need to be increased because bottom line is the developer fees that are collected can only be used for new construction or an existing new school site. So we could add a building or we could build a school with these fees, but they cannot be used for administrative costs or operating costs, and that's by law. The fees are intended to partially offset the cost of a classroom that more students that a new home development will bring into the school district. So as a home developer, and if you build 100 homes, we should expect to get X amount of students. Part of the need will be, as our student population increases, we will need to add classrooms. This is not, the developer fees are not intended to be used every year. They're intended to be saved up. So when the district does need to do this, by adding classrooms or building a school, we have some of the fees to offset that. We have to remember that this is a fee to help provide for the new construction of school facilities in our community. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, we will close the hearing at 8:38. And moving forward, it is recommended that the Board of Trustees adopt resolution number 2020-21-05 as presented. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. A second? I will second it. Any discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Ms. Perrell, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Dr. Ruffin?
No.
No. And Mr. Rush is absent. Mrs. McGrady votes yes. And so it does not pass. It's a 2-to-1 vote, not passing, and Mr. Johnson voted yes. We are at C, the unaudited actuals. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the 2019-20 unaudited actuals for transmittal to the LA County Office of Education. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. A second? I will second it. Any discussion?
Ms. McGrady, I do have a short presentation for the unaudited actuals.
Thank you.
Good evening. We're here to review and approve the 2019-20 unaudited actuals board presentation. I'd like to start off with exactly what are unaudited actuals. What the district does is we close the books as of June 30th, and we start working on closing those books basically July 1st. We close the books according to all of the regulations and financial recommendations from the state, the federal, and the county office for all of the accounting. Once we close the books, which is in the presentation and will be presented to the board tonight, the outside auditing firm will then we have an appointment for them about the middle of October. They will come in and they spend about a week going through all of our files, all of our financial information to verify that it's accurate and true. After that, this report gets reviewed by the Los Angeles County Office of Ed. It gets forwarded to the state controller's office, and then we also have our bargaining groups, both CTA and CSEA, which have their own school finance professionals. They actually get a copy of our DAT file, as we call it, and we'll comb through our financials to ensure that we are accurate and correct on them. And finally, we get the federal government will come in and they perform what's called an FPM, a federal program audit on all of the federal programs. And that is just as extensive as our outside auditors put us through. We spend about a week with those folks as well, and we commit 2 to 3 employees in my business department to manage that. So I want to start with a thank you to not only the district staff, but to the business office for being able to get this put together in these certainly unusual times. Next slide, please. Just quickly looking at this, this is our budget cycle, and we're currently right now on the unaudited actuals that we're finishing up for last year. Next slide, please. A couple of business highlights. Our ADA increased by about 31 kids, but Saturday school really helped with the increase despite not having traditional school for the fourth quarter. And that's typically where we've seen an improvement in some of our ADA numbers because of Saturday school. And without it, we were still up slightly. We were able to add social services personnel to increase support for our student centers and on our campuses. As Joe had mentioned earlier, our cafeteria continued operations through this pandemic from March, I want to say 16th through July 30th. They served 835,000 meals. Finally, we completed several major career technical ed projects, such as the composite lab. We've installed several crop boxes, or basically a greenhouse, and we have put together a sound engineering labs on a couple of campuses. Next slide, please. Here we look at our LCFF funding profile for last year. So starting at the top on the right-hand side, you can see we get home to school transportation, and we get targeted a small amount in the targeted instructional improvement block grant. Those, if you notice on the left side there, are from the 2012-13 award level. With the exception, the home to school transportation is probably dates back to about the mid-90s, 1990, is the last time the state has increased the transportation cost, or well, transportation funding for schools, regardless of the increased cost schools have had. So we get about $1.9 million there. You can see the concentration supplemental grant. That's about $41,237,000. That's what we call our targeted dollars. And those are dollars that are intended for students to improve student services, student learning, things like that. Finally, we get what we call our adjusted base grant. And the base grant really is where we pay for the average employee, whether you're a clerical, a custodian, a security, or my office, the district office, or any of the clerical and support staff, as well as the administration at our school sites. They come out of the adjusted base grant, and that's at about $188 million. So our total targeted LCFF dollars are $231,510,000. Next slide, please. Here you can see this is a breakdown of the expenses of the total LCFF, or our total general fund expenses. So we spend about 84% on salaries and benefits, 12% on services, 4% on supplies, and less than 1% on other. So the total expenditures in the unrestricted LCFF general fund are $233,532,000. Next slide, please. Here I'd like to take a quick look at, other way, one more slide, please. There we go. No, one more, I'm sorry. I'd like to take a look at the year-to-year comparison. So we would be comparing 2018-19 to 2019-20. And looking at the increases or decreases, the differences. And specifically, if we look at the two salaries, because of the fourth quarter, We didn't see our normal overtime or the extra work that our teachers get paid for, whether it be PD or extra time during the day that they're able to work or that they do work. So therefore, the increase in salaries year over year is much lower than what we would have expected in a normal year. Employee benefits were significantly increased last year, and that has to do with our PERS, STIRS costs, as well as our health costs increased considerably last year. Our supplies and operational expenses increased due to the COVID-19 spending that has to do with portions of the federal and state dollars we received, or actually will receive, because we haven't gotten most of that money yet due to the COVID-19 under their spending guidelines. Next slide, please. Here is to take a look at the components of our ending fund balance. So we ended the year with $36,727,379 as our ending balance. But that doesn't tell the whole story, because we have about $270,000 in revolving cash in our stores, our inventory that we have. We had prepaid items for about $1 million. We have assigned targeted carryover funds, and that's about 8.5 million. And if you notice from prior years, that's almost double. And that's because in the fourth quarter, there simply were projects and professional development things that were not done. So that money was not spent. So our unappropriated amount for the district is $18,297,000. With all being said, that's only an increase of $3.2 million in our unappropriated ending balance from last year. Next slide, please. Excuse me. Here we look at our total general fund. This would be our restricted and our unrestricted expenditures. This is how $1 breaks down and where it is all spent. We spend about 38% in certificated salaries, 15% classified, 28% for employee benefits, 5% for books and supplies, 13% for services and other operating costs, 1% for capital outlay, and less than 0.5% for interfund transfers. So our total expenditures last year were $286,377,000. Next slide, please. And looking at the future here, and you can see our ADA trend. We've seen a modest increase from 2017-18, from a low of 19,561 to last year to 19,691. For right now, we're only going to project a very, very slight increase, because we're looking only at 22 days out of 135 reporting days. But the really good news is that our student enrollment is up 464 students year over year. So as of the enrollment day 22, which I believe was yesterday, we now have 21,739 students enrolled in our district. Next slide, please. Here I'd like to take a look at a couple of concerns we have. Now, the state fared a little bit better in actual tax collections than was anticipated from the July deferral. If you remember, normally April 15th taxes were due. Both the state and the federal government pushed those back into July 15th. So the state initially budgeted receiving less money, and they received a little bit more. I want to say, if I remember correctly, somewhere between $2 and $3 billion more. As we move into the first quarter of the fiscal year, we're still in the COVID-19 conditions. Our economy is still in flex. And if we get another full quarter, that means our tax collections will be lower, as the state has deferred about 45% of school revenue into next year. All school districts in the state of California will need a significant that's a tax revenue anticipation note, to cover this shortfall. Basically what that means is, in the month of February, we are supposed to get 9% of our total allocation. Instead, we're going to get about 1.75%. And the same thing in March, April, and May. And in June, we'll get 0, and they'll push all of that into July. So with that, we still need to maintain money, cash, to be able to pay our bills, pay our staff, and keep the lights on. So it could be in the neighborhood of 80, 85 million, maybe a little bit more, we'll see. But we will be bringing that back to the board either October or November. The deferrals are really not sustainable going year after year. If you think about the fact the state defers 45% of our revenue into next year, if they were to pay it all back, they would need to pay us 145% next year. 1, so we could pay off the loan, and 2, pay 100% for the current year. So as they move forward and continue with the strategy of deferrals, it's going to make it even tougher for school funding to maintain at its current rate. Therefore, state funding could be in peril for the next several years. Next slide, please. And I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding last fiscal year's actual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Do we have any questions or comments? I actually have maybe a comment, or well, I guess it is a question. Mr. Hawkins, when we put together our financials, could you just tell us how many agencies or how many sets of eyes take a look at it?
Absolutely. As we look at our financials, first, we really have several members of our department that all look at this and put our eyes on it for accuracy. But then second, we have our outside auditors who come in and literally dig through the files and have us print reports and to verify that that our financial reporting is accurate. Then we send these financials, which we will do tomorrow, send them down to the LA County Office of Ed, where they will review it for the next 30 to 45 days. Then they'll pass that on and forward it up to the state controller's office, where they review it. So they put another set of eyes on it. Then we also have both of our bargaining groups that, with an eye of looking at the financials for, admittedly, if they could get a salary increase, if there was money on the table that they felt they could get for a salary increase, both bargaining groups would be pointing that out to us and wanting to negotiate immediately. So we have 2 bargaining groups. We have the state, we have the county, we have the outside auditors, and then we also have the federal government who'll come in and do an FPM audit on our restricted programs. So you could say there's 6, 7 different agency eyes on it, not just individuals.
So is this the, Mr. Hawkins, is this the same group that we asked for the external audit for? Is this the Edie and Bailey company that's doing this audit?
Yes, it's Eide Bailey. The board approved a 3-year contract with them back in June of 2019.
Okay, because I'm still waiting for the auditor's phone number. I guess I had to look through the yellow pages for it, but I still haven't gotten his phone number so that the board could actually speak with him. So we were able to get the actual messenger letter, which there's some questions, and the external audit from last year. And there are some questions that I personally have as a board member for him.
Excuse me, you said messenger letter?
I'm
not familiar with a messenger letter.
I asked Dr. Vieira for a messenger letter, and what I received was a December 15th, 2019 letter. This is what the board received, so I can only go off of what you guys.
Is that what's called, excuse me, I'm sorry, but is that what's called a management letter?
I don't know.
I believe that's what you asked for, and
I
think that's what we got, because I've never heard of a messenger letter.
Okay, so if this is the management letter, then that's what was given to us, and there's some questions about both of these, but I would like the phone number. If Dr. Vieira, if you could have your team provide the auditor's phone number, that could be helpful. Likewise, it's very interesting that within the Antelope Valley, it appears that we have, I don't know if it's a false sense of security. I don't want us to leave out of this COVID pandemic with our COVID funding of, I'm still not clear. I know that Dr. Kelly was saying that the $29 million of the COVID funds I was hoping that would be kind of explained a little bit too during this presentation about the allocation of those fundings and how that would play out in securing positions for our staff as well. Because after this year, I hope we're not in a position where we have to look at mass rifts. I do know that huge districts, the second largest school district in the nation, is experiencing, grave decline in enrollment. And within the Antelope Valley, we don't have a mass boom of people like moving here. So I'm not really sure if our numbers are secure about the projections of the roadshow data that's showing this mass security of students, or even this concept that's been brewing for the past few months about pod schooling and the expectation and the security from parents about having their kids return, or even teachers and their security about returning to school. So those are some of my concerns. Like, I'm sure there are concerns of our community as well about the safety and the security about returning to school and returning to work under this pandemic conditions. So the face of learning is changing, and it has already shifted. And I'm just really hoping that we'll be able to secure jobs and employment in our school district. So I'm just really hoping that our data is accurate and it's really showing real and true numbers about what we have versus what we don't.
Well, I can assure you that the accuracy of these numbers comes directly from the CDE themselves. So it's not even a number I make up or that we have anything to do with in regards to the COVID-19 funding. I'm not sure if you're aware that the vast majority of this funding has to be spent by December 30th, 2020. That would be in 3 months, unless the federal government changes the law. And as for the enrollment, we have an enrollment increase right now, which is tremendous, of the 424 students that we have. So I'm still not clear on the question you have, though.
Just one point of clarification, Dr. Ruffin, I did send out an email on Thursday, the 3rd of September at 4:29 p.m. to the entire board, including yourself, which had the management letter and also the office phone number of the particular auditor that did this work, but I will send it out again this evening at the conclusion of this meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Vieira. I'll take another look for the number. Thank you.
Okay, we're to the vote. Student board member, Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Perrell, how do you vote?
No.
No. Dr. Ruffin? Dr. Ruffin,
Yes.
how do you vote yes? Mr. Rush is absent. I vote yes. It does not pass. 2 voted yes, 1 voted no. The student board member voted yes. So we are at D. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees adopt resolution number 2020-2106 as presented. May I have a motion?
Motion.
That was Dr. Ruffin. Second? I will second it. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Perrell?
Aye.
That was an aye. Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Rush is absent. Ms. McGrady votes yes. That one passes with three votes for yes, and Mr. Johnson, yes. We are at E, award contract to the lowest responsible bidder for bid number 22021 HAVAC replacement units, Highland High School and Little Rock High School. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the contract with Allison Mechanical Incorporated as the lowest responsible bidder and authorize Brian Hawkins, District Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent, to execute contract documents on behalf of the district. May I have a motion? May I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. I will second it. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Ms. Perrell?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Rush is absent. Ms. McGrady votes yes. It passes with 3 votes for yes and Mr. Johnson voting yes. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the contract with Sunbelt Controls as the lowest responsible bidder and authorize Brian Hawkins, Assistant Superintendent, to execute contract documents on behalf of the district. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you. Ms. Perrell, a second? I will second it. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Ms. Perrell?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Ruffin?
Sorry, something wrong. Is sorry, my mic is delayed. Yes.
Yes. Mr. Rush is absent. Mrs. McGrady is yes. It passes with a 3 vote and Mr. Johnson voting yes. Actions proposed for we are at the consent agenda number 10. Actions proposed for the consent agenda are items consistent with adopted policies and approved practices of the district and are deemed routine in nature. The board will be asked to approve all of the items in the consent agenda by a single vote unless any member of the board asks that an item be removed from the consent agenda to be considered and discussed separately. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the items listed in the following consent agenda categories: educational services, student services, personnel services, and business services. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Ruffin, thank you.
Ms.
And
McGrady, can you slow down a little bit because my mic is getting a little stuck, and because you're kind of moving fast, like I was trying to give a little reprieve to the previous vote, and I was trying to get Trustee Perrell to table the ABTA one, and you were going fast, so I couldn't get it tabled. But right here, I want to make sure that my mic doesn't get stuck, and I want to pull these items. So if you could just slow down just a little bit.
certainly. So
Instead of it being voted out. Hold on one
did you
second.
just say that you were contacting Ms. Perrell during the meeting?
I can contact Ms. Perrell during the reading. It's only a board violation if it's 3 people, correct? So I'm asking to pull 11B.
Okay. What else?
I'm also asking to pull 11O.
Okay, 11O. What else?
Those are the only 2 things.
Okay. Ms. Perrell, do you have anything you'd like to pull? Okay, hearing none, we will vote on the other. Now, are those for discussion or for voting?
Those are for voting.
Okay, so let's vote on the other items. Any discussion on any of the other items? Okay, hearing none, we're voting on all the items except for the ones that we pulled, 11B, O, and, just B and O. Okay, so Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Ms. Perrell?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Rush is absent. Mrs. McGrady votes yes. So if those all pass with a 3 vote and Mr. Johnson voting yes, let's go to 11B, Educational Services. This is an updated appendix, a list of courses for the 2018 through 2023 dual enrollment MOU with Antelope Valley College. Dr. Ruffin.
Yes. So I asked Dr. Vieira to provide the board. This is a dual enrollment MOU with the Antelope Valley Community College. And on page 5, under 6.8, it reads, that there's supposed to be a board bylaw number, and the information that Dr. Vieira provided did not provide a board bylaw number.
So Dr. Ruffin, if I could add, we contacted AVC. Their board bylaws are not public. We were unable to get a response in time to respond to you before the meeting, as was requested.
Okay.
Oh, I should have, in order to discuss it, we needed a motion to get it on the floor, don't we? Okay, so I'm sorry. I just kind of got flustered there for a minute. So I need a motion for us to even discuss it. Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, so thank you. So now we can get back to the discussion. Thank you.
So are we able to table this until we can get that board bylaw number?
I can also provide some clarification, Dr. Ruffin. This, the MOU that you're looking at was already approved in 2018. What's up for consideration this evening is just the updated course list. And it's an annual update of the courses that we're currently offering under the dual enrollment program. So the agreement, the MOU in question has already been approved.
So let me be clear why this is important to people that are like me and that are in my shoes. When a person like me, somebody in my shoes that comes to a school district and we're seeking to have our children have opportunities to be able to be duly enrolled, or what we would be considered concurrently enrolled in a school, we're going to get pushback if we go and we ask questions like, because this happened to me and this happened to my daughter. I asked Dr. Vieira, how many of our students does this MOU support? So in other school districts in LA County, because for those people that don't know, in the Antelope Valley, that we do live in LA County, concurrent enrollment is something that all students are entitled to, not just our kids that attend SOAR. So any student that attends a public high school should have the option to be able to attend a public, the community college, and have their fees paid for. So when this came across my eyes as a board member, and I see this as an option for kids that attend our public high schools, this is a dual enrollment. So the question is, how many of our students within the Antelope Valley Union High School District would be awarded this opportunity? In this MOU, this memorandum of understanding, it's not stated, but this is the agreement that would say it. So it's not here. So I'm asking the question because this is an accountability piece. I'm also asking because this is the policy piece that would state from that perspective at that school, who would qualify for these services? And it's not clear, but you want me as a board member to sit here and make a decision that would possibly disqualify a student when they go there for these services, but it's not clear. So with all due respect, just because it's been done before doesn't mean that it was done correctly. Doesn't mean that it was done with the eye that's looking out for somebody like me, somebody like a student who should have an equal opportunity to go into the Antelope Valley Community College and be afforded an opportunity to exercise that space and have dual enrollment. And that kid should not have to pay, just like those SOAR kids don't, sir. So that's why I'm asking these questions. And why is that such a headache for this district to understand that we are the governing board and these are the questions we're supposed to ask? We're supposed to be the voice for the community to open up the doors to give these kids an equal opportunity to land in that space. That's why I'm asking.
Dr. Ruffin, did you receive your email this morning at 8:47 a.m.?
Yes.
Okay, and did you look at item number 1 and item number 2?
Yes.
And so did you see where it says for the last 3 years, those numbers of students that you were inquiring about?
Yes.
So then you did get the numbers of students.
It says 120. 100, it said 120 students, but it's not written here. That's what I'm telling you. It's not in this MOU. It's all these separate attachments. It's like a witch hunt. And in this MOU, it doesn't even say, see attachment. Where's the transparency? If I didn't ask these questions, Dr. Vieira, it would be like who would even know that?
Dr. Ruffin, you know, your questions were appropriate and those blanks that you left were filled. The AP, which is their, I think it's their, similar to what we call a BP, also has information in there. So I believe that you were given the information that you asked for with regards to this specific item.
Dr. Vieira, all I'm asking is this. I am asking for these dots to be filled in this document so that it's clear in this document when somebody in the future looks at this document, they don't have to search. So when I ask for something to be tabled so that it can be corrected, so that it's a fillable item, it's so that it can be transparent. So when the next eyes come across this, that is a comprehensive document. That is it.
Dr. Ruffin, point taken. Your questions.
I'm not trying.
Your questions were appropriate, but the answers then were provided as well.
You're correct. It was given to us to look at, and if it can be provided here as an attachment to this item, then it would be a comprehensive document, because it is a concern for anyone that comes into this district to be able to understand clearly what their options are for their students and what board bylaws that they need to reference if they're trying to advocate for their kids to get adequate services.
Okay, thank you.
So what do we want to do? Ms. Perrell.
So just so that we're clear, Dr. Vieira, could you give me a summary of, I just want to memorialize what you're saying to me so that we're clear. Are you saying that you're of the understanding that because it's provided to me that you feel that it's sufficient to vote on? Are you saying that you're willing to update the document to be voted on?
That's a decision that you'll have to make.
Oh, thank you. Then I'll make that decision. I'm voting no.
That's right. That's just your decision. Now, the information that you asked for was provided that did fill the blanks. If that's not what you need to take the vote, that's what you got to decide what it is.
Absolutely. I will be voting to table it. And if we can't table it, I'll be voting no. Thank you.
So, Mr. Furno, I may need some help. We have on the floor a vote or a motion and a second to vote on it. And now we are back in the situation of attempting to table it again, which I believe is out of order, but I help me because I don't want to do
Well,
something that's not correct.
No, and that's fine. And my internet is going in and out, so I missed part of this conversation. But you're the parliamentarian as presiding officer. It's your responsibility, and you know, you have the authority to move to move the agenda along efficiently. So if you would, you know, it might be out of order under technical, you know, under Robert's rules, but if you want to allow it to go forward just like you did previously, I think at least then you can get through the vote.
Okay, thank you. You know, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, this is a program that's ongoing. We know it's an important program for many of our students, and I think it would be just unconscionable to vote no on it. So I'm going to suggest that we table it and try to get Dr. Ruffin the information that she needs so that she could make a vote on it and bring it back next week when we have the special meeting. So let's move on to, we're going to table it. Let's move on.
Well, you need a vote on there's a motion to table.
So we have to vote. Okay, so we have to, we vote on tabling it, or we vote on the motion that was there?
I move that we vote. I move that we table it, and I need a second in order
But
to.
you first moved that we vote on it. So then now
So there's
you're-
a second motion on the table, Clerk McGrady. If we're
Okay,
gonna do it that way.
you know what? Go ahead. That's fine. Go ahead. You've made a motion. You need a second.
Second.
Okay, so let's vote on it. Student board member, how do you vote?
This
This is to table it. Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Perrell.
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Ruffin.
Dr. Ruffin, yes.
And I will vote yes to table it. So we will, then do we have to vote?
And then
on
we
the-
go back to the original motion, because that has to die if
Right.
we're doing
So-
Robert's, whatever.
You've tabled the motion, so it's tabled.
Thank you. So we're moving on to O, educational services. Dr. Ruffin.
Thank you. Let me go to that one. So this was the one that I have for, how many students do we have for, this is educational service and supplemental educational services for the tutoring provider approval EDS. How many students are expected to benefit from this, this tutoring program?
So given the current situation with our distance learning, I don't have a projected number under the current circumstances. It's difficult to project if we'd be at or above or at or below where we were over past years. And these are all not to exceed agreements that we have a number of providers that we can send students to for supplemental educational services under Title I.
Okay. And are these funds provided? So these funds are not provided to our staff.
Correct. These supplemental educational services are funds that have to go to, specifically as stated, supplementing students' educations through tutoring and other means. It can go to
Absolutely. So you're saying that our staff is not eligible to earn this $200,000. They're not eligible to do tutoring for this $200,000 pot of money.
That's correct. We do have other dollars to pay our staff tutoring, but this is specifically for supplemental educational services from outside folks.
Okay, great. And how many, is there a specific set amount of hours that each student is eligible for?
You know what, Dr. Ruffin, that is something I would have to research and look and come back to you. I believe that it's a limited dollar figure and not a limited number of hours per student, but I'd want to check the language and make sure that that's accurate.
Okay, and then when I was reading through this, I also saw that it was something about the transportation. So will transportation be included in this?
Transportation, it generally refers to transportation because this is in-home services. Transportation would refer to hours, mileage and hours provided while in transit.
Okay. And when is this expected to start? Is there like is there a window of time just for COVID, or is there like a set amount of time when this has to end, or?
So these agreements are all dated as of this evening to begin if approved, and they run through 6/30. So they run through the school year. Technically, they run through the end of the school calendar.
Okay, and is this specifically for our IWIN students, our individuals with exceptional needs students? Because there's language on the second page of this says special education students, IEPs will serve as the basis and guidelines for their respective instruction. So is this uniquely for special education students, or is this just language to say that special education students are not excluded from these services?
The second is correct. These are Title I supplemental education dollars, and therefore all students.
Okay, great. Mrs. McGrady, I was wrong. I think that this was more of a discussion and not a vote, but I know we have to vote on it.
Okay, so I need a motion.
Motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion? Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Perrell?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Ruffin?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Rush is absent. Mrs. McGrady votes yes, so it passes with a 3 vote and a student board member voting yes. So we are at 15 from the board, and I believe, let me make sure. Yes, 15 from the board and superintendent. Mr. Johnson, do you have anything you'd like to say tonight?
I'll just give a shout out to food services for the work they're doing. Joe Cook and Christina Reynolds are doing terrific work over there. And then a shout out to all our staff and students. Keep doing that hard, necessary work. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell.
I don't have anything at this time.
Dr. Ruffin.
Yes. I want to thank our teachers and our staff for your support of our students and our families during this unprecedented school year and our reopening. As you can see, when we're going through and we're making decisions about what's in the best interest of our students, it is a concerted effort. Just like tonight, when we're going through the decision making, it is within the best interest of our students. I've had a chance to sit in a few classes in our district, and it is clear that the virtual teaching and learning model is reinventing the ways in which we're imagining school as we grow forward. As you know, our students are our most prized possession, and their academic success and engagement is the pathway to their future trajectories. I am hearing a lot from our community, and I thank everyone who has reached out to me. I hear you, I hear our parents' concerns about wanting to be connected to the technology platforms of our students. I hear them about the grading concerns from the summer. I hear them about the grading concerns about the last semester. I hear them about the rigor in the work. I hear them about the compliments of our teachers. I hear our students who have been advocating. I have a student who emailed me about concerns from Highland High School about getting an AP class reinstated. I was able to support him with the ways that he can advocate with his parents and come to a resolve with his counselor and his principals, and also reaching out to Dr. Vieira. And I gave him some examples about advocating and how and I also told him about how a young man at Little Rock High School came to the board last year and advocated for himself and got his AP class reinstated. And these are the ways in which we try to bridge and teach, our young adults as they're voicing forward how to bridge communications internally and to do it in a way where they're self-advocating. What I am observing in our district is through these talks is that in various spaces within the Antelope Valley, we have different experiences, and it's not universal systems or policies. This was also a shared experience while talking to a recent Palmdale sheriff about his encounter with dealing with a crisis in a Palmdale school. And he talked about the differences in communications and how Lancaster Sheriff's Department has dealt with crises that he had experienced within our schools here too. We must do a better job at working within our community district-wide because there are not universal expectations. I am hopeful that the 2-decade-old status quo mentality of our district will shift and afford the Antelope Valley Union High School District an equity, transparent leader that welcomes parents, students, and a community that can benefit from a 4-year educational experience for our kids where they really see our kids and they can see our kids as inclusive members of an assembly and see our kids as at Hope Youth who will come back to our community and continue to make it a better place, not just for the community, but for their families. So in order for us to build a more just and equitable world, it is going to require that we elect leaders that can reimagine and rebuild our institutions. So I'm just going to ask that please consider this as you think about the status quo of our district. Please be the change that you wish to see. God bless and good night.
Thank you. To all of our employees, thank you for continuing the fine work that you do. It's interesting to note that the talks statewide are beginning to include how to safely come back to our sites. We know you want to be back on campus as soon as safely possible, and that is our goal as well. I thank you for finding new ways to disseminate information. Education as we know it has most likely changed forever. Hopefully, we will be better. We will continue to find new ways to teach, new ways to reach our students. Keep up the good work, and thank you for everything you do. Dr. Vieira.
I would just echo the sentiments that prior board members said as well. When you hear and see the presentations that were made this evening and see what all is being done throughout this district on the part of teachers and staff in support of the continuity of education and providing all the services that are being provided. My hat's off to every single one of you for the work that you're doing during these difficult times. Also to AVTA and CSEA and district with the hard work that you've put together and the hours with regards to negotiations. It was a job well done, and I congratulate you for that as well. As always, take care and stay well, and I wish you a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Dr. Vieira. We are at the report out from closed session. We were once again unable to have closed session. I believe we haven't had closed session since December, so we have nothing to report out. I would like to say before we start to close that we will need to have a special meeting next Thursday, September 17th at 5 o'clock. We will need to vote on the information that we heard tonight on the LCP. And with that being said, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. A second? I will second it. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Perrell, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Ruffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Rush is absent. Mrs. McGrady votes yes, so it passes. We are 3 for yes. We and Mr. Johnson voted yes. So good night, be safe, take care, and we will see some of you next week for the special meeting. And then our meeting in October, let me just check the date real quick. Well, I should have, and I can't bring it up. Give me just 1 minute. Let's see, October is the 15th. So looking ahead, we are October 15th. Next week will be a special meeting at 5 o'clock. Thank you and good night. Bye.